Take it away, Marianne.
Okay, good. Well, let me share my screen. It's telling me, oh, there we go. Okay, are you seeing my PowerPoint? I got a thumbs up from Tiffany. I can't see quite everybody, but thank you. And now the way that I have my screen, I can't see anybody. So I think that Susie is going to monitor the chat for me. If you have questions, feel free to put that in there. And if you raise your hand, I won't be able to see that either, but that's why we have Susie here to help out. I am Marianne Valentino, and I teach psychology. I've been teaching psychology for Fresno City College for, gosh, I don't know, over 20 years. And I also taught at Reedley College for a little bit, and actually started my career as a psychology intern. So I started in student services and then switched over to instruction 20 years ago or so. And I also am the facilitator for what we call RAMREL, which is the RAM Racial Equity Lab. I missed your kickoff meeting. If you were at the kickoff meeting, I believe that Dr. Ray Ramirez told you a little bit about RAMREL, and I'll talk about that a little bit later as well. So today you're here for the equity-minded syllabus design. And in a couple of weeks, on July 23rd, you'll have a workshop where you'll have the opportunity to bring your syllabus and put some of these things to practice and show what you've done so far, so that in August you feel like you have a good solid syllabus to share with your students. So let's see, let me share the agenda. So I just welcomed you and I introduced myself. It would be great, well, how many are here? 12. It would be great if you could put in the chat your name and your discipline, but there are only 12 of you. So it would be really great if you could take turns, just unmute yourself and tell us your name and your discipline, because I'd really like to get a feel for who's in the room, what classes you're teaching. And some of you might not be teaching any classes. You might be non-instructional faculty. So at the present time, you might not be teaching classes. But that doesn't mean that in the future you might not teach a class, right? If you're a librarian or a counselor. So go ahead and we'll see how it goes without me calling on you.
Hi, my name is Emily Redondo. I teach in the visual media technology department, photography, graphic design, all that kind of fun stuff.
Oh, great. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Siobhan Hess, joining Fresno City from Reedley. So I'm a librarian at Fresno City.
Yeah, you lateraled over. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks.
Hello. All right, that's working. Hi, my name is Johnny Lopes. I teach welding at Fresno City College. I adjuncted for a few years and just now joined full time.
Great.
Hi, I'm Shannon Williams. I'm a librarian at Fresno City College, and I do teach our information literacy course online. So I'm real looking forward to this whole equitable syllabus. So thank you.
Excellent. 2 librarians. Welcome.
I'm Rob McIntyre. I'm a philosophy instructor at Fresno City.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Tiffany Sarkeesian. I'm a communication arts instructor at Fresno City, transferred from Clovis.
Oh, okay. Transfer from Clovis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew Starry. I'm an automotive technology instructor here at Fresno City College. Just started in March.
Welcome. I haven't been keeping track, but that didn't seem like it was everybody. Did everyone have the opportunity?
Oh, hi, I'm Marissa. I'm a philosophy instructor. I'm sorry, I'm in the car driving to Fresno, so I'm having trouble using my phone, but
Oh,
yeah.
okay. Okay. So we have 2 philosophy.
Yeah.
Great, welcome.
And Marianne, we've also got Bo Sunahara, who'll be teaching automotive. Sorry, but his voice is off right now.
Okay, okay. So does that mean we have 2 automotives?
Yes.
Great, okay. So quite a few CTE here today. Welcome, welcome. And is that it? Going once? Okay, thank you. It really is helpful for me to have an idea of who's in the room. So here's our agenda. We just finished the introductions. Susie is going to deploy some polling questions pretty soon. And then I will have some opening comments focusing on how whiteness shapes experience. And then we will go through the 6 equity-minded syllabus components from CUE, which is the Center for Urban Education. We had a 2-year partnership with them, and as a result of that, we are able to utilize their materials. And then I'll give you some homework, and we'll have some time for questions, I hope. And that's what you're in for today.
Marianne, we had one more person join us.
I heard a little beep. So who just joined us, and what are you teaching?
Linda, can you hear us? I see you're unmuted. She might be having trouble with her mic.
Okay. Well, Linda, maybe you can put your discipline in the chat when you get a chance.
She's one of yours, Marianne.
Oh, okay. So I'm not seeing it, so I didn't recognize, because we don't call her Linda, we call her Susie. So that's Susie, and Susie teaches psychology. Welcome, Susie. Okay. So Susie Nitzel, you could go ahead and deploy the polling questions.
You see him? Do you guys see the polling questions?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So go ahead and feel free to answer them.
I need to click on that to go into that, right? If I click on these speakers, then I'll go through the laptop, right?
I'm gonna give it a couple more seconds. Okay, Marianne.
Okay, so what I'm seeing are the result. Are you seeing the results too, or is it just me seeing the results?
Everybody should see the results.
Oh, okay, so we have Susie. Is that you? Did you answer the poll? Are you the classified professional in the room?
I cannot answer the poll, so I'm not certain who is classified professional.
Oh, okay. So
And I think that may have been a misclick.
okay, yeah, because I didn't think there were any classifieds in the room. Last year there was an administrator that joined us, and so that's why we gave all of the choices. So we have mostly instructional faculty and one non-instructional faculty. I'm guessing that is our new librarian who transferred over from Reedley. So most of you are teaching something and are creating a syllabus, right? Which of the following best describes your racial category? So it looks like we have 60% white, 1 Asian, 1 Black, 2 mixed. And I specifically chose to use the term racial category rather than racial identity. And that's because for a lot of white people, including myself, I put myself in the white category. It can be difficult to think about that in terms of a racial identity. It's very common for white people to not think of white as being an identity. We tend not to think about race in terms of our personal identities. And we'll talk more about that as I go through how whiteness has shaped us. And whiteness has shaped all of us, right? Not just people who categorize themselves as white. I also specifically wanted to ask you about your racial category because I want to bring to everybody's attention that we're in a racialized space. Every space is a racialized space. And again, white people tend not to think about that because it's not on the top of our identity for most of us. So we're in a racialized space here. We're in a racialized space in our classrooms, in the library, in the grocery store. And we can talk about more about what that means later if you want to ask questions about that. And it's certainly something that is talked about quite a bit in the racial equity lab. Which of the following best describes your syllabus writing experience? So we have 7 who are calling themselves proficient and 3 novices. And it's funny, I've been writing syllabi for over 20 years and I still wouldn't put myself in the expert category. So maybe that says something about us as learners and as lifelong learners, that it's hard for us to conceptualize ourselves as experts. Which of the following best describes your familiarity with an equity-minded syllabus? So we have 1 very familiar, 4 moderately familiar, 2 slightly familiar, and 3 not familiar at all. Okay, so I might be able to call on some of you to give some examples. Rather than me doing all of the talking, those of you who are very familiar or moderately familiar. And which of the following best describes your understanding of stereotype threat? 1, I understand it well enough to explain it to someone else. So I might be able to call on you to provide some examples of that when we get to it. And 4, I think I understand the concept, but I'm not confident enough to explain it to someone else. Maybe we'll today be able to bump you up to the next higher up category. And 3, a vague idea, and 2, I don't know what it is at all. So we'll have some exposure to that today. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing those results. Okay. Did we have another poll or was that it?
It was just that one.
Okay, okay, wonderful. Feel free anytime to raise your hand or to put something in chat, or there's only 12 of us in the room. So if you also just want to unmute yourself and kind of interrupt me when I pause, that's fine too. I don't mind that at all. Okay, I was not able to attend the kickoff session. So I'm assuming that you saw the Fresno City College definition of equity, but I didn't want to necessarily make that assumption. So I thought that I would share that with you today. So here's our FCC adopted definition of equity. I know that Dr. Ray Ramirez would like us to revisit it and maybe tweak it a bit, but this is what we've got right now as our working definition. Equity refers to the identification and removal of barriers that have prevented the full participation of historically marginalized and underrepresented student populations, with the goal of eliminating identified differences in outcomes between those populations and the student population as a whole. Okay, so we're here for syllabus design. And obviously we believe that the syllabus design has some influence in achieving our equity goals, or we wouldn't be here. So I wanted to start with my first reaction to this idea of an equity-minded syllabus, because maybe some of you are having that same reaction, I don't know. My first reaction to this idea of an equity-minded syllabus was, what does the syllabus have anything to do with eliminating my equity gaps or with creating an equity-minded classroom? So you know, my first reaction to it was, I don't know if I want to call it resistance, but it was just a little bit of confusion and maybe some disbelief. And now I don't know what it is, 3 years later or something. I am the go-to person for doing the syllabus review workshops. So I have definitely come to a place where I believe really strongly in the syllabus as a equity-minded teaching and learning tool. And that's why you're here today. And then as I'm reflecting on this, on everything that I do with regard to being equity-minded, this theme of students need to feel cared for always comes up. So I wanted to just make sure that I highlighted that in my opening comments. About, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, time goes by really fast, so maybe it's 15 years ago, I'm not sure. I was going over the syllabus with one of my Psych 2 classes, that's an introductory psychology class, and those tend to be large classes. So there was like 80 or 100 students in the room, and we were talking about expectations. My expectations of my students, and I was inviting them to have a conversation with me and with each other about their expectations that they have of me. And an African-American, male African-American student raised his hand and he said, I expect my instructors, don't believe he said you, I think he said my instructors, so the third person, I expect my instructors to care for me. And I can tell you that I was really kind of taken aback by that, because in my experience as a student, and I did attend Reedley College, I was a first-generation college student. My father did not graduate from high school. My mother did graduate from high school, but did not go to college. So I went to Reedley College, and then I went to San Diego State, and then I completed my doctorate at CSPP Fresno. And it was not part of my expectation, my experience, that my instructor should care about me. So I was taken a little aback by that. I validated that for him. I said, I agree with you. And I said, and I do, I care for you. And I hope that that comes across in my interactions with you. And then maybe about 5 years ago or so, I was standing outside of my office, and outside of my office allows me to do a lot of people watching where my office is situated. And so I was watching students come and go, and I made eye contact with a previous student. And so I kind of waved at him, and he came over to speak with me. And this was also a young male African-American student. And so I started to have a conversation with him about, how are things going? What classes are you taking this semester? He was this was the spring semester, so he was finishing his second year, so he had quite a few classes behind him. And so we were, I was kind of catching up with him and asking him how things were going. And he said to me spontaneously, he said to me, you're one of the only instructors that I felt cared about me. And so there it was again. And he said, one of the only instructors. And he, like I said, he was finishing up his second year, so he had quite a few classes. He was a full-time student. And that made me sad that he would say that. And so I said, just being who I am, I teach psychology and I love numbers. I said, what percent of your instructors do you think care about you? And I can't remember if he said 20 or 25%. I remember saying back to him either, so what you're saying is 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. I can't remember if it was 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. Either way, it's really horrible, right? So I said that back to him, and he said, yeah, I think so. And looking back, I'm really embarrassed of my reaction to that, because I started to try to negotiate with him, like to negotiate that up and say, really, like, might it be higher than that? And that instructors are not demonstrating care for you in the way that you are expecting them to demonstrate care for you. And so then we had this conversation about how instructors demonstrate care. And I think I negotiated my way up to 40%, which is still pretty terrible. And like I said, I'm embarrassed that I was doing that instead of just validating that for him. I did some of that, but I also negotiated with him. Even so, 40% is what I was able to negotiate up to, cared for him. And I've heard from students, and I've seen in the research that feeling cared for is important to students, and especially important for historically marginalized students, those students that we are trying to eliminate the gaps for. So I just want you to be really thinking about that, how we demonstrate care, and particularly how we can demonstrate care in our syllabus, which might be their first contact with us, especially now in the digital age, where we might be deploying our Canvas site, opening our Canvas to our students well before the first day of class, and they might be reading the syllabus before they meet us. Oops, sorry about that. Last summer, I read this book, How to Be an Anti-Racist by Dr. Kendi. And early in the book, I think it's like page 10 of the book, he writes about feeling like he was too stupid for college. Like he's in college and he feels too stupid for college. And that's called imposter phenomenon or imposterism. And I recognize that in myself, and I want to acknowledge that in my students, because it is such a common phenomenon. And so when I read that in Dr. Kendi's book, it just made me realize all the more that I needed to address that really early on. And so you'll see that I address that in my syllabus, this idea that we don't belong, like we're imposters. And I share with my students that I still feel that. I still sometimes feel in my role in leadership on campus that I don't belong in these leadership positions on campus, that I am somehow an imposter, that I'm not smart enough, good enough, professional enough for these positions. So thinking about how our students who are first generation come from historically marginalized backgrounds, maybe have had really horrible experiences in education with their teachers, and with microaggressions and prejudices, and being maybe even told outright that they're not good enough for college. I have had students tell me that. So something to always keep in mind, that students need to feel cared for, and we need to validate that they belong. I also read this book called Equity Talk, From Equity Talk to Equity Walk. And there's a couple of pages in this book that specifically address how whiteness shapes experience, students' experience on campus. And as a white person, and I said this already, I don't always see it. I can't always see how my whiteness has shaped my experience because it's my experience, right? So when I read the description of how whiteness might shape experience, it was something that required me to really stop and reflect quite a bit. And so I knew when I read that I had to also share that with the new faculty. For those of you who are not white, what has happened with previous faculty that I've shared this with, who are people of color, Black, Indigenous people of color, is it resonates with them. They go, oh yeah, right, that is how whiteness has shaped my experience, because whiteness shapes all of our experience. So I'm gonna read them to you one by one. I'm going to read them slowly to give you some time to reflect on them, how it might speak to you in some way. And then I'm going to open it up for some comments and let you share a little bit of your reflections. Okay. So the first one, most white students, leaders, faculty, and staff do not see whiteness as a racial identity. And I already spoke to that a little bit. The rest of them all have to do with our students. So most white students can take advantage of faculty office hours without feeling their intelligence or potential will be compromised. Don't have to ensure that they are using proper English to avoid being stereotyped. Do not view group work with apprehension because they don't expect to be left out. Often attribute their academic achievement to effort or hard work and rarely notice or acknowledge the assistance they received from teachers and social networks. Feel they are entitled to receive extra academic support and not feel stigmatized. Can usually be sure they and their experiences will be reflected in the curriculum. Okay, so I want to give you a little bit of time to reflect on that a little bit. And then I invite you to make some comments about it.
I feel like I've definitely felt with my students the feel they are entitled to receive extra academic support and not feel stigmatized. I remember when I first started teaching a Photoshop class that had a lab component, I would wait for students to raise their hands or ask for help. And then I realized that I had a white student who was doing really well in the class, but he was also raising his hand all the time, while some of my students of color weren't. And so once I realized that that was going on and he just expected me to, jump on it all the time, I changed how I approached our lab time to, instead of waiting for them to ask for help, to moving from student to student and asking them if they wanted help, or just starting a conversation with them so that they would feel more comfortable to ask for help.
Excellent, thank you. And I love that what you did was, what I heard you say was you recognized the space as a racialized space, that the white student could ask for help without feeling stigmatized. He felt entitled to that. It wasn't something that he thought, oh, if I ask for help, then that somehow makes me look weak. And your other students, because obviously all our students at some point need some help, right? They're not experts, or they wouldn't be in the room, right? We're there to help them. But many students, particularly marginalized students, asking for help is a sign of weakness, or they think they're going to be judged by that. And so your tactic of then, okay, I'm going to be more intrusive, right? That's what the literature calls it. It's not necessarily the most comfortable language to use, but to be more intrusive, right? To actually go out and ask them for their questions rather than waiting for them to come with their questions. Thank you for that. Anyone else?
I would second that, Emily, too, with asking for help too, because we get so many students too that would apologize, or they're like, I'm not sure I understand, so we're there to help them. And I'm always like, no, it's no problem. Like, that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you. I would also comment on the last one with being sure they and their experiences will be reflected in the curriculum. In the library, I've had students that have come to me, like in the past, that have asked about certain titles or books, and we didn't have them, so that kind of made me aware, like, oh, okay, we're missing some material that is, has different experiences, different backgrounds that students could read. And so made that a effort to make sure we had those and open up that conversation for students, or with students.
Great, right. And the sad part about that, because that's come up, and I'll speak about it a little bit later, that's come up in other disciplines as well, is that it takes students to bring it to our attention. And we need to get to the point where it doesn't take a student to bring to our attention that they are not reflected in our curriculum, and they're not reflected in really, their experience on our campuses and in our library, or in our spaces.
Exactly.
And that first one, so we talked a little bit about Emily brought up about the classroom. Think about the office space too, right? Which students actually show up to our office spaces, and how do we make sure that our office spaces are inviting to our students?
Can I go ahead and say something?
Yes, please, Susie.
Yeah. So I do the same thing in the classroom, where I really try to engage my students so that nobody is pointed out per se. So I like, for research methods, when they're doing APA references, I give them a list of incorrect references, and then I pair them up in the classroom because I usually do it with a computer lab. They're able to work together. And then I just kind of pop into each and every single group. And inevitably, every group is having some issue. But because they're all having issues, nobody says, oh, this is on me. You know, so that's really important. But with the office hours, especially online, one of the things that I do is every week I look through to see who didn't, turn something in. And I usually don't jump on that first week, but that second week, if they've missed something or they've scored really poorly, I invite them to come talk to me via Zoom or even on the phone. And by doing that, I often get those students who would not just show up to a regular office hour. And I've spent sometimes long conversations with students who do feel like they're not part of the school system, that they shouldn't be there, or that they're going through a lot of other things. So, it is important to kind of be active in seeking those students that are, starting to kind of fall under. That's it.
Thank you. Yeah, it's this very kind of old school idea of, well, I've put my office hours out there and now students need to take responsibility for their learning and they need to come to me. And that perspective misses the stigma that can be attached to asking for help. And so in order to try to help students get over that stigma, we need to take a more active role and reach out to those students and invite them specifically to come meet with us. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. So what is stereotype threat? And so let me go back really quickly, because this idea of stereotype threat is part of this idea of feeling stigmatized and not wanting to go to office hours because they feel like their intelligence or their potential might be compromised. That's number one. This idea of not wanting to speak because they're self-conscious about their English and they don't want to be stereotyped because of their English speaking skills. So stereotypes, I see elements of stereotype threat weaved throughout this entire slide on how whiteness shapes experience. So what is stereotype threat? So stereotype threat is the unconscious concern that one's performance on a task will confirm the negative stereotypes about the group to which one belongs. This unconscious concern distracts students from the task at hand, negatively impacting their performance, thus confirming their unconscious fears. So what does that mean? That means that we all belong to lots of groups, right? I identify myself as a cisgender female, so I belong to that group. I am racially white. I am ethnically Italian American, so I belong to those groups. I identify myself as heterosexual, so I belong to that group. All of those groups can have a negative stereotype attached to them. What stereotype threat is when that stereotype about my group becomes salient to me. And that can be conscious or completely unconscious, that it becomes salient to me. That the anxiety around confirming the stereotype now interferes with the person's ability to perform at their best. So here you're seeing what looks like a African-American female student at her desk. And what you're seeing in the bubbles are the stereotypes. So this stereotype that as a female, she's not good at math and she's overly emotional and she's not good at math. And as an African-American, there's a stereotype that she's intellectually inferior or that she's violent. So these are the stereotypes that are out there, that are embedded in our culture, that are in our media, that we've been bombarded with, these stereotypes. And people can then have those stereotypes injected within them, right? And now she's in a math class And there's this stereotype of not being good at math and being intellectually inferior. And so now she's worried that she's going to confirm that stereotype, and she's afraid to speak up, and she's afraid to ask questions, and she's afraid to go to office hours because she doesn't want to confirm the stereotype. And the anxiety around that actually makes her not do as well on her math tests or in her science classes. It might actually make her more emotional, because she is now emotional about confirming the stereotypes. And so it becomes this very vicious kind of cycle. And so as educators, we need to be aware of these stereotypes and of the stereotype threat, and things that we are able to do in the syllabus, in the classroom, in the hallways, in our interactions with students, in the library, to try to mitigate stereotype threat. I'm looking at my time, and I think and rather than asking you for some examples, that I better move on. So the syllabus review, every year I do this. Every year I reflect on my practices, my program structure and requirements, my policies, as I am creating my syllabus. That's what the syllabus allows us to do. And that's what allows the syllabus to be a tool for equity-minded teaching and learning. It is our opportunity to reflect on those practices, to reflect on our prerequisites. So what are our expectations about our majors in the classroom versus our non-majors in the classroom? I teach general psychology, so most of the students in there are not majors. So how does that fit into the structure and the requirements of their majors? And what are my policies? And do my policies have the potential to have a disproportionate impact on some students over others? What I also like about the syllabus review is that I'm not just reflecting on my own policies, I'm reflecting on the policies of the college, because you do have some requirements to put in college and district-wide policies, and you can reflect on those policies, and you can wonder and ponder, do those policies have a disproportionate impact on certain students? And if they do, you go to your academic senate and you bring it there. Right? And I have done this. A few years ago, a student came to my office, and we were talking about, it was actually the Monday after the drop deadline. And she came to my office and she said, we're halfway through the class and I am not doing well, and I really want to pass your class. And so we had this conversation, and then she mentioned that she was also in this math class, but her work schedule changed. And as a result of her work schedule changing, she could no longer attend that class. So she was going to fail that class because she could no longer go to it. And she said she knew that on Friday, which was the drop deadline, she went on WebAdvisor to drop herself from the class, and she could not drop herself from the class. And the reason she could not drop herself from the class is because it is a district-wide policy that if there's a hold, any kind of hold, so she owed, I think it was $21 was the health fee. She owed the health fee to the college. And because she owed the health fee, she couldn't drop herself on WebAdvisor. She could drop herself by actually going to the counter and getting help. And now that everything's online, I looked this up, the policy's still in place. She would have to contact admissions and records. She could call them, or she could email them for assistance to drop the class. Okay, so that's the way it currently is. At the time, we were face-to-face, and she would have had to actually go to the counter. But she couldn't go to the counter on Friday because she was at work, because her work schedule had changed, and there she was at work. And so she was stuck in the class. And she wasn't asking me to do anything about that. She was just venting to me that this was this policy that she was not aware of. And on Friday, she really tried her best to drop herself, and she couldn't, and she's stuck in that math class, and she was going to get an F at the class because she could no longer attend. And I said, well, did you contact the instructor? And she said, no, because she read the syllabus, and the syllabus said it's the student's responsibility to drop themselves. Okay, we think students don't read the syllabus, but they do. And there's authority behind that syllabus, and that was the instructor's policy. And I said, okay, well, what's your math teacher's name? And I'm gonna just see if I can help you out with this. I don't know if I can, but I'm gonna see if I can. And so we continued to do what we were gonna do about my class, and she left, and I called her math instructor, and I didn't know him, and I said, you don't know me. We have this mutual student. She's tried to drop your class. I explained the whole thing to him. And did you know that you can drop her? Even though it's past the drop deadline, it's Monday, you can still drop her. You can contact admissions and records, and you can tell them that you meant to drop her, and you didn't, right? You can do that. And he said he didn't know that, and that he had the ability to do that. He also didn't know anything about that policy that made her stuck in the class. And he dropped her, and I got an email from her thanking me for intervening and for helping her drop that class. And now in my syllabus, instead of it saying it is your responsibility to drop yourself, I think it still alludes to I want it to be their responsibility. And if you have any difficulty, I am here to help you, and you need to contact me right away so that I can help you. Right? Let me know, and I can help you through that. So sometimes I think we have these really rigid policies, and we kind of mean well, right? It's the student's responsibility, but we're not recognizing the barriers that our policies are putting up. And that's a district-wide policy that is still in place. That policy is in place. As faculty, we can help our students to not for that to not have to be a barrier for them. And we're going to reflect on our class materials. This includes our readings, our videos, our models, our guest speakers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When I'm talking about models, like a nursing faculty might be teaching CPR, and maybe all of their little CPR models are white. Those students who are not white are not seeing themselves reflected in that curriculum, right? When all of the models are white. And this happens in biology too, with the biology models. If teachers who are teaching child development and bring in dolls, right? And perhaps all of their dolls are white. And because whiteness is permeated throughout our society, particularly if we ourselves are white faculty, we might not recognize it. And it shouldn't take a student to say, do you have any models that look like me? It shouldn't take that, right, for us to reflect on that. So our models, our videos, the authors of our readings. I did have a instructor who went through this syllabus design workshop, and afterwards he said, I realized that all of my guest speakers are white, because that's who I know. I am a white male, and that's who I network with, and that's who I know. And most of my students are Latinx, and that's wrong. That's wrong. And it took the syllabus design workshop for him to really reflect on that, and for him to see it, right? So again, he's not necessarily going to put in his syllabus the names of his guest speaker, but the syllabus review is what allowed him to reflect on his guest speakers. Okay, so the purpose of the syllabus is oftentimes we think of it as a contract between instructors and students, and that's not wrong. That is what it is. It's a record of what the course covers and how the student outcomes and performs and evaluates for that accountability purpose. That's absolutely true. And it also is a learning tool to help students develop effective practices and strategies, as well as a communication mechanism that shares how teaching will be approached. And this is the part that really makes it an equity-minded tool. This ability to utilize the syllabus to help students develop themselves as learners, right? Learning practices, particularly for your first generation college students who don't necessarily know what that means and maybe have had, like I said, some unpleasant experiences with education. Now, there are some things that are required in your syllabus. I want to go through those kind of quickly. Student learning outcomes as per ACCJC, our accrediting body. We are required to have our student learning outcomes in our syllabus. A few years ago, an instructor contacted me and said, do they have to be word for word in the syllabus, because she didn't like the wording of one of the student learning outcomes. It was gendered, which is really kind of odd to be in student learning outcome. And what I mean by that is part of the actual language of the outcome said he/she or he or she in it, and referring to the student. And she wanted to change it to they. She wanted to make it gender neutral. And the dean was telling her no, because of this rule of ACCJC saying that our student learning outcomes have to be in our syllabus. Her dean was telling her it needed to be copied and pasted word for word from the course outline of record. So I contacted our ALO, our accreditation officer, liaison officer, and she told me, no, that's not true, that she could actually change the she, he to they, because it didn't change this, it didn't change the SLO, right? Now, if you're using simple syllabus, then what simple syllabus is going to do is bring your SLOs in from the course outline of record. And we used to be able to change them, but Don Lopez has locked them now. And so you won't be able to change them. So that's just something to think of. If you're using simple syllabus, you won't be able to change that field in simple syllabus. It will bring the SLOs in. Now, when that came to the attention of, that was an adjunct instructor, what I told her to do was, you need to go to your full-time faculty and voice that concern with the SLO, so that when it goes through curriculum, that gets changed. That gendered language should be eliminated from the official SLO. I don't know if that's happened yet. I should check up on that. There's nothing in Title V. Title V gives no direction in what should be in the syllabus. We do have an administrative regulation, and in the administrative regulation, it does indicate that we must have an attendance policy, that we must have a drop policy, that we must have a late work policy, that we must list our topics that are going to be covered, that we must have something about major assignments with approximate due dates. You don't have to have exact due dates, but the AR does say major assignments with approximate due dates, and grading scales and evaluation criteria for all graded work, including the final semester grade. How is their grade going to be calculated? The Academic Senate has created a checklist that's available to you on Padlet. And then I just wanted to mention simple syllabus here. So you might be going through the simple syllabus training, and gosh, just I think this summer, one of the faculty who is actually part of this group, the new faculty, the new Employee Equity Academy, said that she wasn't using simple syllabus because she wasn't feeling like she could have the flexibility to create an equity-minded syllabus using simple syllabus. And I said, oh, I disagree. Let's take a look at my syllabus, because my syllabus is in simple syllabus. And she looked at it and she said, wow, I didn't know you could do all of those things in simple syllabus. So there is a lot of flexibility in simple syllabus. And you can put in Fresno City College simple syllabus in a Google search, and then you can look at everybody's syllabus. So you can find mine in there and take a look at it. Okay, so we're halfway through today, and we haven't looked at the 6 components yet of a equity-minded syllabus. So let's go through those. And I know I'm doing a lot of talk today. You will have the opportunity to workshop your own syllabus and to put these things into practice on July 23rd for the 2-hour workshop. I'm going to skip this slide. Okay, so these are the 6 components of an equity-minded syllabus as put together by CUE, the Center for Urban Education. So the first one is welcoming. So welcoming students and creating a classroom culture in which they feel cared for. And what I'm going to do with this slide is go through the 6, and then I have subsequent slides with some examples for you to kind of ponder. And hopefully you're being very active listeners right now, and maybe you're jotting down some ideas of your own of things that you can do to tweak your syllabus to maybe make it more welcoming or more representative, you know, one of the other 6 components. I will tell you that I had a female African-American instructor who went through the equity-minded syllabus review, and at the end of it, she was like, I read over my syllabus, and I'm really, she said, as an African-American woman, I kind of came to the workshop thinking I'm all good, and then she read her syllabus and she was like, oh my gosh, I'm not all good. Like I need to make some revisions. And so we paired her up with someone else, and she went through the syllabus review with a colleague and made some revisions and feels better about her syllabus now. Demystifying college policies and practices. I was a first-generation college student. I don't remember how I learned to decode all of the language of education. Right? We have a lot of jargon in education, and so many things that we put in our syllabus. We're just assuming that students know what they mean, and they don't know what they mean. Creating a partnership in which faculty and students work together to ensure success. Validating students' ability to be successful. Deconstructing and countering the presentation of whiteness as the norm, and representing a range of racial, ethnic experiences and backgrounds. So those are the 6 major components. And I want to take some time to go through each one separately and give you some examples. And I'll pause a little bit after each one and see if anybody wants to chime in and provide either an example or a reflection or an aha moment. Okay, so the first one is welcoming students and creating a classroom culture in which they feel cared for. And I gave you some examples of some aha moments for me, with students really telling me that was important to them. And we see it in the research as well. So I invite you to start with a welcome statement. Right? The very first thing that they read is welcome to the class. You know, something that is very inviting. Over the summer, actually just like 2 weeks ago, a colleague of mine sent me her welcome video. She's teaching 100% online, and she sent me her welcome video. And her welcome video, I didn't ask her for permission to say this, but I'm not telling you who she is. But her welcome video started with, "Hi, I am so-and-so. I am teaching this class." And then she immediately launched into, this is a 9-week class and why that's going to be challenging and hard. But that it was 9 weeks instead of 18, like it was, bam, I'm in your face and this is going to be a hard class. And my first comment to her was, "Whoa, can you maybe do a separate welcome video, right? That is more about you and about your excitement to be their instructor and welcoming them to the class." And she was like, "Oh yeah, you're right." So she recreated that video because it's 100% online class, so she's relying a lot on videos. I didn't ask her if I could see the syllabus because that should also, in my opinion, start with a nice welcoming statement. Using inclusive language and a tone that helps students feel cared for and valued. When you have somebody else read your syllabus, it can be really enlightening. Like things that you did not think were a kind of harsh tone can come off as very harsh to somebody else reading it, particularly if you instruct that person to, okay, here, I want you to read my syllabus as if you are a first generation historically marginalized student. Right? Can you put yourself in that mindset and now read it? And does it use inclusive language? And is the tone of it welcoming, friendly? You feel cared for? Every now and then use the adverb please. It makes such a big difference in the tone, right? So if you're going to be absent, please send me an email. Makes such a big difference than if you're going to be absent, send me an email. Like, and every now and then adding please just really surprisingly changes the tone of the syllabus. And again, keep in mind that they might be reading your syllabus before they meet you if you are giving it to them in Canvas or sending it to them in an email before class even starts. Conveying a willingness to work individually with students. And if you have an office, look around and assess how welcoming your office is, right? Does it feel inclusive? Does it feel friendly? Does it feel welcoming to your diverse array of students? I invite you to come to my office. My office kind of looks like my psyche threw up on the walls. So my students often tell me that my office feels really welcoming, and that pleases me. So here's some examples of welcoming statements and really common statements that you'll see juxtaposed against each other, that just a few little tweaks in language make a difference in welcoming language versus unwelcoming language. And I'm going to read it to you because I don't know if all of you can see it very well. So I welcome you to contact me outside of class and student hours. You may email me, call my office, or contact the division and leave a message. So a very simple statement. And this is pretty common. If you need to contact me outside of office hours, you may email me, call my office, or contact the division and leave a message. So you see just little tweaks in language can make it feel more welcoming. And here's another one. All of us in the class, you, me, your peers, have a responsibility to create an environment in which we can all learn from each other. I expect everyone to participate in class so that we can all benefit from the insights and experiences that each person brings. Versus, come prepared to actively participate in this course. This is the best way to engage you in learning the material, and it makes the lectures more interesting. And Susie will make sure that you have access to this PowerPoint so that you can think more about it. Are there any comments about the welcoming statement? I'm not going to give you a whole lot of time because we don't have a whole lot of time. Okay, seeing none. And maybe because I am trying to go through a little bit quickly, you could use the raise your hand feature. And then Susie can let me know if somebody has raised their hand. Okay, demystifying college policies and practices. So I'm just going to give you an example here. The unit. So this is what was in my syllabus for years and years and years. 3 units. This is an 18-week, 3-unit course. So the expectation is that you will work outside of class for 6 hours each week. That was it, right? And that's really common. And when I exchanged my syllabus with Dr. Ray Ramirez, he wrote next to this, he was reading it as if he were a first-generation historically marginalized student. And he wrote next to it, what am I supposed to be doing for 6 hours? That's what he wrote down next to it. Like, what exactly does this mean? And like, students don't know what this means. Like, this is very education speak, right? What a unit is. So I tweaked it, and then it looked like this. So the expectation for all of your college classes is that you will work for 2 hours outside of class for every hour spent in class. This out of class work can be reading, writing, going to tutoring or office hours, completing online quizzes or other homework, etc., depending on the requirements of the class. This is an 18-week, 3-unit course. So the expectation is that you will work outside of class for about 6 hours each week. I suggest that you keep a calendar of activities to structure your time. I have provided some suggestions on the last few pages of the syllabus to aid you in your quest for success. So here I'm trying to demystify. I'm also trying to create a partnership, which is the next component. So I'm doing a little bit of that. Now, this is a hyperlink. Let's see if this is going to work. And hopefully it's going to put it on the correct screen. And it didn't. So I'll just have to move it over. I have 2 screens. So I don't mean to scare anybody, but this is what it is now. It's 3 paragraphs now about the unit. I don't know that I want to necessarily read all of that to you, but you are welcome to look at my simple syllabus, and you'll see that now my description of what it means to be a 3-unit class has become 3 paragraphs. And the reason it's become 3 paragraphs is because what I hear from students, what we hear from students, particularly our first generation students, is their families don't understand what a unit is. Their families don't understand that when they're taking 12 units, that they're expected to be doing 36 hours of work. And so they're getting these demands from their families. And so I acknowledge that here. And that second paragraph is, if like me, you are the first one in your family to attend college, it's likely that your family and friends don't understand the time commitment that's necessary to successfully complete a college class. And so you might want to share this with them, where I've explained it to them. Right now they can share their syllabus with their family and say, I really need this time in order to be successful, and I need you. I hope that you will support me in my endeavor to be successful in college. So that's why this has become now 3 paragraphs. Now I've messed up my screen a little bit. Okay. Last semester, no, I guess it was last year. Last year, one of the new faculty said, I'm not sure I understand all the policies myself. Like, I don't know how to demystify the policies when I don't understand the policies. I said to her, if you don't understand the policy, you need to understand the policy, right? As the faculty member. So you need to ask your dean or your chair of the department or your academic senate president to help you understand the policy so that you can demystify it for your student. Susie has her hand up. I see that. Susie.
I just wanted to mention that, you know, because I come from an adjunct background, that I think it's really, really common that the adjuncts do not know the policies. I mean, it took me several years to figure out the policies at Merced College, not because they weren't willing to tell me, it's that they didn't train the adjuncts, even though they gave everybody, you know, a 2-hour adjunct training every semester, it still does not fully train the adjuncts. And I think this is something that probably should be addressed across all community colleges. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, so our current academic senate president, Michael Takota, is working on a adjunct faculty academy. And and I know Michael, he'll get it done. So it will be up and running probably before we know it, an adjunct, an academy just for our adjuncts, so that they do have a space to discuss the adjunct perspective of being left out and a place to learn the policies. Yeah, thank you for that.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Creating a partnership in which faculty and students work together to ensure success. So the first thing that I did with Ray, Ray and I worked together extensively in the very beginning around the syllabus review. And so we were exchanging, he was teaching a class at that time. So we were every semester kind of exchanging our syllabi. And the first thing that both of us did was we changed from third person pronouns in our syllabus to using first and second person. And it makes such a big difference in creating a partnership. So replacing students with you. And if you look at my simple syllabus, you'll see that there are a few times when I still refer to students as students instead of you, when I am talking about a college-wide kind of policy, and I want them to recognize that that it also applies to them with all of their other instructors. So I might say use the third person instructor and student, but I'm really strategic about when I do that. For the most part, I have replaced students with you everywhere in my syllabus, and I have replaced instructor with I or me. So now it is a partnership between me and you, and I am speaking directly to you in my syllabus about me and my expectations as your instructor. Makes a huge difference in the tone of the syllabus. When I have had instructors say, can I do that? But it's a contract. Yes, you can. You absolutely can do that. So here's the before statement. Students are expected to attend class regularly. Students should contact the instructor if they miss class. Really? Why not? I expect you to attend class regularly. Please contact me if you need to miss class. All right, now I'm speaking directly to my student. I think it also illustrates some care, right? Because now it's about you and me. It's not this really impersonal student and instructor language. It can really go a long way in creating a partnership. I'm going to go ahead and go right on to validating, because in the example that I'm going to give you of validating, it also is an example of creating a partnership. So validating students' ability to be successful. So this was my first attempt at doing that, at validating students' ability to be successful This is what I had in my syllabus the first time that I was really working on this and pondering this and trying to figure out how to convey this to students in the syllabus. So you bring a wealth of knowledge, experience, and perspective to class. Oh, I lied. This isn't my first iteration because I didn't used to have this second statement in there. So this is a iteration later. I especially value the cultural wealth that you bring to the class. Cultural wealth refers to the wisdom and viewpoint you possess from your homes and communities. Your participation is valuable in your learning, as well as to the learning of your classmates and to my growth as an instructor at Fresno City College. Therefore, it is important to all of us that everyone participates in online discussions, completes reflection assignments, and contacts me with any questions or concerns. This will make the learning experience much more meaningful for everyone and contribute to everyone's successful completion of the course. This was for a 100% online course, so that's why I specifically mentioned the online discussions and the reflection assignments. Now, I think it might have been last year, but it could have been the year before that, that I presented this as an example of validating, and a faculty who was putting himself in his old shoes of being a first-generation college student, because he was way back when. This was a Latino faculty. And he said, I can tell you that when I was 18 and brand new to college, that I would have read this and thought, this does not apply to me. Right? She's talking about somebody else. Someone else has a wealth of knowledge and experience, but not me. So I thought, right, that's that imposter syndrome. So how do I try to convince that student that this does apply to him? This does apply to that student. So I have now added this paragraph. It is common for students to believe that the above paragraph does not apply to them, that they do not have a wealth of knowledge, experience, and perspective to bring to class. It is so common, it has a name, imposterism or imposter syndrome. I can remember feeling like I did not belong in college with the other, smarter, more sophisticated students. In fact, I still have moments of doubting my contributions to the college after 20 plus years, and lots of praise from my wonderful colleagues and students. So I'm validating imposterism in them. And you can see throughout that I'm also trying to create a partnership with them. And then in my syllabus, I have a link to a video on imposter syndrome. And I have a syllabus quiz. And in the syllabus quiz, I ask them questions about imposterism. And I can tell you that the feedback from students is it really resonates with them, this idea of imposter syndrome. So I have felt like this additional, what is it, a couple of sentences plus the link to the video has really made a difference in helping to validate students and create a partnership with them. Representing a range of racial, ethnic experiences and backgrounds in assignments, readings, and other materials. I probably shouldn't have mentioned that earlier because I could have just waited until here. So, things like guest speakers, and I've given you an example of that. The authors of our textbooks, the pictures in our textbooks. I'm really mindful of that as I go through the pages of my textbook and look at the pictures. Are there the very stereotypical kind of pictures? I teach psychology, so we talk about intelligence and we talk about prejudice and crime and the whole gamut of the human experience, and so I'm really sensitive to the pictures that are in my textbook and the faces that are in my videos. I have a video that is a really wonderful video content-wise about learning strategies and dispelling the myth of learning styles. It's a really well done video that was taken from the Learning Scientist website. So the Learning Scientist folks didn't create the video. The people who created the video stole the information from Learning Scientists, right? And they created this video. And all of the people, I should say it's an animated video. And all of the people, the animated people in the video are white, all of them. There's one that I thought looked African-American, but when I show it to other people, they're like, no, that one's white too. So all of them are white, and all of the authority figures in it are male, and the subordinates are female in this video. And so I found out on Facebook the folks who produced the video, and I contacted them, and I explained my issue with the video. And to my surprise, they actually messaged me back on Facebook. And the message back was, we outsource the animation. And so they were divorcing themselves from responsibility for it being all white and for it being very sexist video. We outsource that. And I wrote them back, okay, so next time you outsource a video, you should let your animators know that there needs to be a sensitivity to diversity in their videos, right? So we had that. So I felt good about that conversation. And I think that's what it means to be an equity ambassador, a racial equity ambassador, is that we speak up, we speak out, we call it to people's attention, not just in our own little world, but outside of that too. And I have chose to continue to use the video in my class, and then I use it as an opportunity to have that conversation about whiteness in education, and about what that means to see a video that is all white, because the white students in the room don't recognize it at all. And sometimes the students of color don't recognize it at all either, because we are in a society where whiteness is the norm. And so sometimes they don't notice it either until I point it out to them. Sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. Usually the women in the room recognize right away the sexism. When I say, what do I love about this video? What do I hate about this video? I almost always have a woman raise her hand in the class and say, you don't like that all the authority figures are male in it. So I use it as a teaching moment in the class. And I did have one student complain about it. She emailed me and she said, this was a biological psychology class. And she said, I'm not here to learn about social justice issues. I'm here to learn about biological psychology. And I replied back to her, you're taking a biological psychology class most likely because you're majoring in clinical psychology. And yeah, and that was true. And that means you want a clinical practice, and that means that social justice issues need to be important to you, and this is why. And so we talked about what her clients are going to bring to her and the experience of different people. And we had this conversation around that. And I'm afraid to say that I don't know where that went. She did end up dropping the class. I don't know why she dropped the class, but she did drop the class. So there was that. So this is about reflecting on your classroom curriculum. And then also, because the syllabus might be their first point of contact, what can you do in the syllabus that helps students see themselves in the students in the classroom, right? So one thing that I do, which is a very simplistic kind of thing to do, is I want students to see that even though psychology is historically very white, although really there have been psychologists of color they'll go way back. They just were left to the fringes, right? And so a traditional psychology textbook might not highlight many of those really important figures in psychology. That's one of the reasons why I don't use a traditional textbook. So I do use OER, Open Educational Resources, so that I am able to draw from very diverse psychology perspectives. So I have them read Black psychologists and from Asian psychology perspective. What I don't want to do is I don't want them to be reading about people, psychologists who are people of color, only talking about racial issues. So yeah, I might be talking about memory and learning, and who are the prominent psychologists in memory and learning who are not white. So I think that's kind of a common thing that happens, particularly in the social sciences, is that students are reading material that has been authored by racially diverse authors, but all of the writings are about race and ethnicity. And that, I think we're kind of missing the boat when we do that. So here I have psychologists that are just pictured in my syllabus with some quotes from them. So here I chose to use mostly APA presidents, so they can see this sort of history of psychology with APA presidents. So here is 2011 APA president, Dr. Vasquez. And then I love this quote of hers because it recognizes the social justice issues historically in psychology. So although psychology has not been immune to the application of psychological knowledge in very destructive ways, oh, I added the very, overall psychology, many psychologists in MPA have demonstrated a commitment to social justice. I think I might have taken out, oh no, and then I have Dr. Clark, the essence of human predicament is the inescapable reality that human ego is a most fragile and delicate phenomenon. It is difficult, if not impossible, to be human without embarrassment. And I was really strategic about picking that quote from him because of that issue of embarrassment to ask for help, particularly among men of color. So I want to highlight Dr. Clark and talk about Dr. Clark's work and this validation of vulnerability, and particularly in education. So that's one of the ways that I infuse representing in my syllabus. And then I also, because I use Open Educational Resources, the list of authors are very diverse as well. Deconstructing and countering the presentation of whiteness as the norm. So I think that having the quotes from the racially diverse APA presidents and other people of color in the syllabus is a very surface way of deconstructing whiteness, right? That psychology is not all white. But in order to really deconstruct and counter whiteness as the norm, we need to do much more than that, right? More than just representing. And so this is what Q says. And I wanted to, there's a lot of words on this slide, but I did want you to really think about from your own discipline how you might be able to deconstruct and counter the presentation of whiteness as the norm. And for some disciplines, it's more challenging than others. And this is where getting together and talking with colleagues and spitballing ideas can be really beneficial. So what does that mean from Q, from the Center for Urban Education? So this means promoting awareness and critical examination of students' assumptions, beliefs, and privileges. This includes our readings, our activities, our assignments that ask students to critically examine their assumptions about different racial ethnic groups and the privileges or disadvantages that accrue by virtue of their race and ethnicity. It promotes awareness and critical examination of dominant norms and broader social inequities, which includes readings, activities, assignments that ask students to examine the history and contemporary experiences of people and communities that face discrimination, racism, and marginalization. It includes readings, activities, assignments that ask students to question dominant racialized norms, as well as inequities in major social institutions, for example, education, health, and law. And teaching psychology probably makes this a lot easier than some other disciplines. I have seen some really wonderful examples in math, which is one that often comes up as, well, how do you do that in math? And there's just been some really wonderful work in math, and there aren't any math instructors here, so I won't belabor that. But you might be kind of scratching your head right now. In my discipline, I'm not really sure how to do that. So we can have a conversation about that. I don't think we'll have time to do that today, but I am definitely happy to follow up with you on it. So how am I doing that? So I've always felt like I did that in my classroom, that I countered the presentation of whiteness as the norm in my classroom, in the readings that I did and in the discussions that we had. I certainly do that with the discussion that I have with that video where they're all white, and we can have a conversation about why that was okay for the illustrated. Why did the illustrator think that was okay to do that? And not that they thought it was okay. They probably just didn't even think about it, right? They just did it that way without thinking about it, because whiteness is the norm, right? So I have that conversation with my students, but I really didn't do it much in my syllabus. So I've been really thinking about how to do that in the syllabus, and I thought, well, I can do that in the required text material section, because right now this is what it says. You do not need to purchase a textbook for this class. In lieu of a traditional textbook, we will be using a combination of reading modules from a free online platform called the NOVA Project and additional reading materials and videos posted to Canvas. And then I thought, well, this gives me the opportunity to give them some examples of what's to come, that can put in their mind this idea of deconstructing and countering whiteness. So this is what I've come up with. This allows me to select readings from a variety of perspectives to reflect my value of diversity and inclusion. For example, in week 2 of the class, you'll learn about Dr. Manley, a neuropsychologist who studies how systemic racism in education and healthcare might affect the development of Alzheimer's disease and what we can do to eliminate these differences. In week 3, we'll read about how well-accepted Western notions about goal-directed behaviors have been challenged by cross-cultural research from India. And in week 6, and I didn't want to bore you with all of my examples, but and I certainly don't want to have a gazillion examples in here, but I want to have maybe 2 more examples of that, because this is week 2 and week 3, and then I have an idea for what I want to do in week 6, and then maybe again in week 12. And so I'll give them a few examples so that they can see that this is indeed a value of mine, and that I'm certainly not afraid to talk about it, and we will talk about it in class. We will talk about, and we will talk about racial inequities and what that means in the field of psychology, and how many of our findings have been colored by whiteness as the norm, and how we can challenge that, and what new research is elucidating about that. Before I give you the homework, I want to say that what I forgot to add to the agenda was there will be a evaluation that Susie will send out, an evaluation. And I do appreciate and take very seriously the comments that I get. I did, after one presentation, get a serious criticism of an example that I used. And I pondered that a lot, and I made some, I consulted with some colleagues. I talked to Ray about it, and I made some tweaks to my syllabus based on that evaluation comment, because I do take those seriously. What I wish would have happened was I wish that that person would have contacted me so we could have had a conversation about it. Because as I was reading the criticism and now sharing it with some colleagues and saying, what do you think this means? You know, what can I do to change this? Because the comment was that an example that I used was offensive to her as a person of color. And so now I'm trying to figure out what that means, right? And it just would have been so much more beneficial to me to have a conversation with that person, because I definitely would have validated that concern for her and said, thank you for bringing that to my attention, because that's the only way that we get better. But these are, racial equity is very challenging for a lot of people to talk about. And my whiteness definitely does sometimes get in my way. And I need people to challenge me in order for me to grow and get better. So I invite you to contact me privately and have those conversations with me. I also understand that you're brand new and you're not tenured, and maybe that's not comfortable for you. And so I invite you to put those comments in the evaluation. Okay, what's your homework? So your homework is to take a good look at your syllabus. If you're brand new teaching and you've never written a syllabus before, you need to be writing one because school is starting soon, right? August 9th, is that the first day of class? August 9th is coming up really quickly. So you need to be writing a syllabus. And I want you to be pondering which of the 6 components of an equity-minded syllabus are generally present and which are generally absent. So you might want to annotate your syllabus, right? As you look at it, oh, this is representing, and over here is welcoming, you know, that sort of thing. So that's the first thing that you'll do. Might not necessarily not be the first thing that you do. That's an overarching kind of thing that I want you to do. As you are reading through your syllabus, I do want you to try to imagine yourself. And for some of you, you just need to put yourself back in your own shoes when you first started college. And that might have been when you're 18, or it might have been when you're 34 as a returning student, right? Imagine yourself as a first-generation student from a racially minoritized group reading the syllabus on the first day or before the first day of class. And then ask yourself these questions. Do you feel that the instructor is willing to provide opportunities and resources for you to do well in the class? Why and why not? Do you feel that the instructor assumes that you want to learn and cares for students' development as scholars and human beings? Why or why not? I had a student tell me that it was only because of me that she stayed in her, I'm just going to say STEM class. I'm not going to say the exact class, but she had a STEM class, and she said that that instructor every day made her feel like she didn't belong there. And because she was female and because she was a person of color. And he was the kind of instructor that was like, look to your left, look to your right, and half of you, 2/3 of you are going to fail this class. And that was reflected in his syllabus and reflected in the way he conducted the class. And she told me that because I believed in her, she was able to stay in that STEM class. So this is really important for many of our students. So does the syllabus convey that you see them as learners, as successful learners, and you care for them and their development as scholars and human beings. Do you feel the instructor and course speaks to your experience? And I'm focusing on racial equity. I don't know if there's another one. Oh, there is, sorry. Do you feel like the instructor is an advocate for racial equity? So there it is, the racial equity. This doesn't mean that you're not broadening your scope and you're not thinking about inclusivity to include also gender and gender identity and disability. You are considering all of those things too. The reason that we focus primarily on racial equity is because what the data shows us is that race intersects with all of those other identities. So when we look at our disparities, our outcome disparities, we'll see that there are ability disparities with disabled students not doing as well in certain courses. When you intersect race with disability, then you see that it is our racially minoritized students with disabilities that have an even more of an equity gap. So because race intersects, and you see that also with gender identity, right, and with gender, with age, right, with all of the other identities. So just because I am focusing on racial identity doesn't mean that I'm telling you to ignore being inclusive when it comes to other identities. But we're putting race at the forefront because of the intersectionality. Okay, so you're going to bring a draft syllabus, or maybe it's going to be a completed syllabus, to the workshop on July 23rd. It would be really great if you could annotate it, put this is where it's representing, and this is where it is welcoming, and so forth. And then we'll have the opportunity at the workshop to get in small groups and to exchange with each other and provide feedback so that in August you feel like you have a syllabus that you feel proud of. But this is a journey. Let me put that up here. Right? This equity journey begins with you. Change must happen individually before it can happen collectively. People drive change, lead change, and sustain change. It is a journey. I keep tweaking my syllabus, and I've been doing this for 20 plus years. And I've been doing the equity work for, I don't know how long now. I'd have to look up the first workshop that I presented. At least 3 years, I've been conducting equity-minded syllabus review, and I'm still tweaking it. Right? I'm still trying to make it the best that it can be. So bring what you've got to the July 23rd workshop, and if you can't be there for that, I invite you to contact someone. That could be your faculty guide. I don't know who your guide is yet, but your faculty guide, or one of your new colleagues that's in your cohort, and exchange your syllabus with that person and get their feedback. Ask them to read it as if they were a first generation historically minoritized students and give you some feedback on it. You can also utilize this tool, the Q Equity tool. So we'll make sure that you have this. You have to drag it. So this will actually walk you through some exercises to reflect on the 6 components, and it gives you some more examples, and like I said, some sort of self-reflective exercises so that you can tweak your syllabus. I'm not going to click begin exploring, because if I click begin exploring, it's going to ask me to put in my email and kind of register and stuff like that. But it's free. You can utilize this tool. And then I want to do a little plug for the Racial Equity Lab. So I am the facilitator for that. If you're interested in joining a cohort, I do still have spots available for, not every cohort has spots available, but I think Tuesday afternoon and Thursday afternoon and Friday morning, I still have spots. For the 2 librarians in the room, I know I have room for you, and maybe one of you has already signed up, I'm not sure, but the librarian's spot is Monday afternoon, 1 to 4. It's 9 Mondays, so it's basically every other week. It would be great if I could have both librarians in the cohort. That'd be fantastic. But for the rest of you, if you're interested, you can contact me or Ray, probably me and Ray, and then we can see if we can find a spot for you. So the racial equity lab, I think that Ray already described that to you, but so I won't say anything more about that. I'll just open it up to questions. And let me stop sharing my screen so I can see you. Questions about the homework or about the lab or anything else?
Marianne, I was curious about your you using the simple syllabus, and I was curious about how you distributed that with your students. Did you send a link out prior to the semester beginning? Is that also the go-to for the students during the semester, or do you have something else that's somewhere else?
So,
Sorry, I know a lot.
No, there's just like this whole kind of political backstory to simple syllabus that I don't necessarily want to get into. But so the reason that I was originally reluctant to use simple syllabus is because it prints really ugly. Like you convert it to a PDF, and the PDF doesn't recognize widows and orphans. So you have all these widows and orphans, and if you have pictures, which I do, I have lots of pictures in my syllabus, then it might have a page with a few words on it and a picture, and then all this blank space. So that's my biggest beef with simple syllabus, is that if you go to print it, it's really ugly. So if you want to give your students a printed copy, then you need to do that kind of separately, like copy and paste it into a Word document or whatever, and create something different. So I did that when I was face-to-face. That is what I did. So, the last year we've been 100% online, so I didn't have to worry about it. So all they had was the simple syllabus link. And I didn't send out the simple syllabus link just all by itself. The week before school started, I would let my Canvas site be available. And so I would send them a welcome message with the link to the syllabus, and also post an announcement that was with the welcome message. And so that was, I think that answers your question. The thing that I do like about simple syllabus is you can put links to videos in there. Like I have that imposter syndrome video linked in there. So that's really nice, that as they're reading it, then periodically they have a video that they can watch.
So I wanted to contextualize my question a little bit more specifically, because at Clovis, and I know there's going to be different policies and procedures, but we had to send our syllabus to our admin's aide, and had a specific format. So I was just wondering if some syllabus works for the format that's required.
You tell your admin aide that your syllabus is in simple syllabus, and that's all you have to do, because it's a public site and now your admin aide has access to it.
Thank you for that.
Mm-hmm. And because it's a public site, I like to every now and then go look at simple syllabus, and I just like look at what people are doing. And I guess on tape, I'm going to say sometimes I'm appalled. Like, I want to contact that instructor and say, really? Why? So the policy, I'm gonna go ahead and say it here before I talk to Susie, that the policy that most irritates me is the policy that I've seen way too many times, and that is, if you're going to miss an exam. So these were syllabi that I was looking at were mostly face-to-face, but also online. Sometimes there's a really short window of time for students to take an exam. If you're going to miss an exam because of some emergency, you must tell me beforehand in order to make it up. Why? I see some of you laughing. Why is that a ridiculous policy?
If it's an emergency, how are you going to know that it's going to happen? I remember being a student and I got rear-ended on McKinley right before, I think, a midterm. And even though I had just hurt my back, you know, the first shock of getting hit, I ran to my class, to this instructor, and was like, I'm so sorry. I just got in a car accident. The cops are on the way. I hope I can make it up by. And you know, how are you going to do that to your students and make them all panicky, right? So
and think, really, really. And the thing is that then what I will hear instructors tell me is, well, you know, that's what it says in my syllabus, but if the student contacts me the next day or a couple of days later and they have a really good excuse, then I'll let them make it up. And what is wrong with that?
The student may not contact you. Like, they may not reach out because they think I can't do it anymore. Like, it's too late.
And who are the students who are more likely to reach out? And who are the students who are less likely to reach out?
The students who are doing well will reach out, and the students who aren't, you know, and you can do that along racial lines also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. You're more entitled students, you're more comfortable in the educational setting students, they're going to contact you and say, I missed it. I was in a car accident and, or whatever, you know, I had a family emergency, whatever it was, they're going to contact you and say, can I make up the, and your other students are going to say, well, I'm just out of luck. Yeah, it is not an equity-minded policy. It's not a fair policy at all. Other questions? I think Susie, did you have your hand up?
I did. Just a real quick question. You know, I'm going to be doing this Simply Syllabus workshop, I think Thursday. I've got it written down. Anyway, you had said that you felt like in some ways that kind of constrained you. And yet I've looked at your syllabus and you do have photos. And is that something that was just easy to tweak? Or is it something that was that you needed additional sourcing for?
So I think what I said was that someone else, one of the guides actually said that she doesn't use simple syllabus because she thought it was overly constraining and difficult to create an equity-minded syllabus. And I said, have you seen mine? Because I haven't found that to be true at all. I found it actually really easy to use, very intuitive, and I felt like I have been able to create an even more equity-minded syllabus and simple syllabus because I can link to videos and put in pictures and yeah, all kinds of stuff. I do think I have a pretty dynamic syllabus, not perfect, but I think at this point it is a pretty good example.
Right.
I'm not teaching this semester, so some of the changes that I showed you today are not in my current syllabus because my current syllabus is old, right? So it doesn't, if you go to a simple syllabus right now and you look at my syllabus, I don't do a very good job of deconstructing whiteness as the norm. In a year when I'm teaching again, I will do a better job. It's a work in progress. Other questions or concerns?
You just had me thinking about, the work I'm going to do on my syllabus. And one thing that I know comes up on mine is I put that no late work is accepted, which is not true. But, I think there's something in there. Sorry, my dog's hacking. Okay. Hold on. Let me take care of her and I'll come back with my question.
Okay. And I do see that it's 11:02. So we do need to be wrapping up. Susie, was there something you were going to say to wrap things up, and then we'll take Emily's question?
Not necessarily, but I can. Marianne will send me her slides, and I put in the chat. I'll post them on the Padlet within a couple hours. I just need to make sure it's accessible. Again, your syllabus workshop is in 2 weeks on the 23rd, and you guys all have been placed into cohorts. And what will happen is you'll come into a big room like this, and then you'll go into breakout rooms with your faculty support guides. And then after that is our 3-day event, starting what we call opening week. It's not the first, it's the week 0 of the semester. And we'll see you then. But yeah, that's it. Thank you very much, Marianne, as always. Okay. I love facilitating Marianne's sessions because I always learn so much.
Thank you, Susie. Emily, let's get back to you.
Yeah, so it says something like, no late work accepted, but under certain circumstances, reach out to me. And that's because I don't want to come up with a 1-day late policy, 10% off. Yes. All that kind of stuff. And, want to encourage them to keep up on their due dates. So yeah, how can I word that differently, I guess?
So this would be my first thought, my first suggestion, is that it might be okay the way that it is, because it's not like you're saying absolutely under no circumstances no late work, right? You are telling them that there are certain circumstances in which you will accept it. The issue that I have is not to wait until they reach out to you. So to watch your grade book, to pay attention to who's turning in what, and if something is not turned in, to reach out to them and say, hey, I noticed that you didn't turn this in. Is there something that I can do to help you? You're reaching out, and wow, they really they really respond to that. I mean, my students will email me back and say, I've never had an instructor reach out to me. And I just thought that I had blown it, and this is what happened, and I'm really sorry. And sometimes they'll say, can I have 1 more day? And I'll say, yeah, you can have 3. And the reason I tell them they can have 3 more days instead of 1 more day is because if I give them 1 more day and they still haven't done it, I don't want to have to go through that conversation again. So they'll ask for 1, and I'll say you have 3, or you have 2. It kind of depends on what the assignment was, and it depends on what their circumstances were. But I just I initiate the contact.
Okay. I've started doing that a lot more. Yeah. Instead of just assuming that they're not wanting to do the work or something. So, okay, cool. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. And I do also let them know that I'm going to be intrusive too. I in my welcoming message, and in my opening video, I tell them, you might hear from me, I'm here for you, and I'll reach out to you and check your email and watch the announcements and, all of that kind of stuff. Well, I have kept you 6 minutes over. You've all been very gracious. I appreciate your time. I know I talked at you a whole lot. I hope I gave you a lot of things to think about. Make sure that you go to that Padlet and look at the syllabus checklist from the Academic Senate and look at the equity-minded syllabus review PDF form. I think it's PDF. It might be a Word document that Q puts out. Those will give you some more ideas. And I might see you on the 23rd. I'm not sure. I think it depends on if there are enough facilitators for the workshop. I'm the backup facilitator for the workshop, so I might see some of you there. Feel free to email me, marianne.valentino@fresnocitycollege.edu anytime about anything. Thank you.